Welcome back.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah,
You?
I'm really good. Cruising through Lent with no meat.
I know.
It's very hard.
You're killing me in our weight loss competition.
I am dominating the weight loss competition. It's not necessarily because of meat. It's probably more because of sugar. But
Doesn't matter. You're winning. I am losing.
But yeah, I can't wait for Lent to be over so I can eat some more meat.
Really? I
Well,
thought you were.
I'm going to continue it for a little while, but I think I'm going to ease off the just one day. I might go to 2 days or 3 days a week where it's okay. It's just really hard sometimes to like last night we had tacos and that was pretty easy because I have the rice and the beans and I'll have everything else, but the meat, no problem. But like Monday, Shauna got these nice butterflied pork chops. And I can't even remember. Well, we had baked potato and salad. So I had a baked potato and salad. And everybody's like, oh, man, these pork chops are so good. They're so juicy. They're perfect. And then I'm like, can y'all lie to me and say that they're really bad?
Dried out.
They're dried out or something. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is terrible. This is terrible. And then I started feeling self-conscious like I didn't cook them right, So I was like, wait a minute. Are they actually not good? Because they were like playing along. They're like, no, they're actually really not that good. Hand me the barbecue sauce. And it's like, oh, shoot, did I dry them out? I mean, I hope I didn't. But I didn't.
Sounds like a no-win scenario.
It is a no-win scenario because I can eat it, but I want to taste test it to make sure it's okay, right? Like, we cooked some food for some other people, and it was like, pulled pork or something. I want to taste it for seasoning.
Dude, all right, we should save this. We'll call Grammy later.
Yeah.
You should just tee her up with that because she takes a sample piece at it.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's what you want to know that it tastes good before you hand it to somebody else, right? Like, you don't want it to be a mystery. At least if it tastes good to you, and then later they're like, "That was okay." You're like, "You don't have taste buds." You know what I mean? Like in your mind, you can be like, "Well, I liked it," but if you don't try it, and then you hand it to somebody, and they're like, it was okay, a little dry." You're like, "Oh gosh, now I wish I would have tasted that."
Dude, that'd be great. One of those great candid camera things, that they used to do. Remember that show?
Yeah, candid camera.
Really
Loved
funny
it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes like at a nicer restaurant, like one of the nicest restaurants, you'd take a kid to, and the waiter would be like, "Would you like me to cut the steak for you, mister?" Right?
Yeah.
For the 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yes, please. Be great. Little waiter cuts the steak and then takes a piece.
Just to make sure it's okay.
It'd be awesome.
I think most kids wouldn't mind.
No, they wouldn't. It'd just be a good candid camera for the parents. Be like, did that just happen?
Did he just
Did
he just try one? It's kind of like my rule is when I'm cutting something for a kid, it's like 2 for you, 1 for me. We used to share meat that way when the girls were younger. They'd have the plate of other stuff, and I would be cutting. I'd cut 2 or 3 pieces, put it on their plate, and then I'd cut a couple pieces for me, and then when they finish, I'd cut some more up and put it on their plate. So be like that. Anyway, so we're like deep into this series.
of spiritual practices,
of soul foods, spiritual practices that strengthen your soul. We talked about prayer last week.
Prayer.
And
Talked about solitude.
And solitude the week before. So this week we're talking about Sabbath.
Shabbat.
That is the Jewish word. So Sabbath. Traditionally in the Jewish religion culture, they would take a whole day off. Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, right?
Yep.
And practicing faithful Jewish people still do it today. B&H Photo Video. I don't know if you know them, if you've ever ordered anything from them, but they're a big New York company. They are very traditional, by the book Jewish, so they close the whole website down. You can't order anything from them from Friday to Saturday. So, which is kind of unusual. You would think,
You know what I used to get from them? Film.
Oh yeah. Oh, I bought lots of film and paper. And
film and paper
for the.
Back in the day, that'll be a whole
chemicals.
We could do a historic, chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do dry or liquid concentrates for your?
Well, when I was in college, we did dry. I mixed it. I actually mixed it for the whole lab. But then when I got out of college, I just did liquid because it was easier than having a 50-pound bag of this and a 10-pound bag of this, and I wasn't going through it as much, right?
Yeah.
The real problem is the expense of the silver reclamation,
Mm-hmm.
stuff for used developer fixer.
Sure. I don't remember. You remember way better than I do.
Anyway, well, I mean, yeah, for like 5-6 years. I got tons of that stuff. And you know what's sad about all that is I've got boxes and banker boxes full of slides and film and all that kind of stuff. And with photography, especially with film photography, if you shot a roll of 36 and you got 3 good pictures off
you
of it,
were
that was
crushing
great. Yeah.
it.
There'd be times I'd go out and shoot like 10 rolls of film and end up with 3 photos that I was really good at. But I kept all of it,
Yeah.
right? Just in case. So I don't know what to do with it.
We were encouraged to be pleased if we got a shot that was what we were going for off a roll.
Yeah. Off one shot, one roll is actually pretty good. And yeah, did you cut your own film and everything? I would order it in a big spool, and we had refillable things, and you had a bag you would put it all in, and then you'd have to sit there.
I was good at the other process.
Oh, the
popping them out and put them on put them in the reels for the cans.
Oh yeah. You guys still gotta do that in the bag. You gotta.
We did it in the darkroom.
Yeah, but I would do it in a bag. You get a darkroom bag in case somebody else comes in the darkroom. Or whatever. Like, you got in case somebody else is in there with the light on and they're doing their own stuff. You just have a bag. You put it all in, and then it's dark anyways. It's not like, at least then you can see. Anyway, so Sabbath. I'm gonna be honest. I struggle with this idea, of ceasing work, ceasing the daily grind of here, there, everywhere, for any period of time, much less an entire day.
Well, let's read this. Let's read the scripture verse we had pulled out for this, because I do want to have frame our discussion up with this context of story in Mark. We have Mark 2, verse 23 here. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Then he said to them, we'll skip a couple lines there. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. All right, so that's what we're working with today, and kind of in this scenario, you can kind of picture it. You have the disciples walking through grain fields, and
do you want to know something interesting about that? I just found this out the other day too. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's Numbers or Deuteronomy. I think it's Numbers. There's actually a law about picking heads of grain out of somebody else's field. Like, so it's in there where it's like you can go to somebody else's field and pick heads of grain and eat it, but you can't take a sickle to it. That would be against the Jewish law.
Okay.
Which is
nice.
Fascinating. So it's kind of a harken back to that,
and
right?
Okay. So it's not like it was kind of like imminent domain if you were picking the heads off and eating them.
Yeah.
Right? You could walk along, think about like berry bushes, and you could it's a you pick, you eat scenario, not a you pick and pack it out of here.
Well, it was all about being nice to other Jewish people, right? Like your brothers and sisters. If they come into your field, let them eat the grapes. I love that. Let them eat. They can don't take a sickle to it
and don't take it
collect
with you.
But you can.
It's like you can't get a doggy bag at a buffet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's all you can eat.
Just go out there and have some.
Yeah, because I thought it was weird. With you,
I thought it was weird. We talked about this, I think, off air. I thought it was weird. I was like, man, how hungry do you have to be picking heads of grain off of wheat and eating it? Now that I read that, right, I'm thinking to myself, it's almost like I don't want to ascribe any feelings or anything to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? But obviously the Pharisees were following, or in a visual, were able to see Jesus and his disciples do this, right? So you almost wonder if it was kind of like an homage, like hey, look what we're doing. Like almost like they wanted
to get caught.
Wanted to get like, you know what I mean? Where they're like, look, they're taking other people's stuff, and you'd be like, no, numbers, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like it was almost like really kind of. It was interesting to me. So maybe they weren't necessarily starving after all, because I was like, man, you got to be starving to do that, right? But they may not have been. They may have just been. It could have been just a custom and a culture. Right? Like maybe everybody did it.
Yeah.
You know, as you were just walking through the fields, you're like, ooh, that berry looks good.
Yeah. It's like edamame. Stuff's not good, but people eat it. You know?
Yeah, I guess.
Pop it out of the little shell.
Yeah. Maybe they were just walking and bored.
Yeah.
You had nothing else to do.
Yeah, it's like sunflower seeds. It was like
dude, it's like
seeds.
sunflower seeds.
They're on their way to a baseball game.
Oh my gosh.
And they needed seeds.
I've now have more appreciation for this passage.
Yeah, because you don't eat sunflower seeds because you're hungry.
No. You it's just something to do with your mouth. And I wonder if eating
I'm sure
it is. It's just like
you
that. You're kind of chewing.
You got to get the wheat germ out of it or whatever.
Yeah. And just spit a little, or whatever. Dude.
Okay, this is great.
This is great.
All right. So I'm glad we're lay people.
Yeah.
And we can come up with this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because if we weren't, people would be like, what in the heck are you guys talking about?
Well, yeah, they would have educated that right out of us. Okay. So the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not man for the Sabbath. I love that. That's going to be kind of our theme for the week. And I don't know. Ready to get in some callers? I want to call some new people.
Who are we going to call? Ghostbusters. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. I want to call our friend Angie.
All right, let's call her.
Hello.
Angie! You're on the Laymen Show.
Hold on, I can't hear you.
Hold on.
She can't hear us?
In the car, out of the car.
That's the fun of these.
Okay, I can hear you.
You can hear us great. Hey, welcome to the Laymen's Show. You got a minute?
Oh boy, yeah.
Precisely. Do you have 9 or 10 minutes? I mean, 1 minute would be a really short call.
Okay, I do. I'm in the car.
Perfect.
Well, hey, we're gonna catch up to speed our discussion. We're talking about Mark 2:23, and this is where Jesus is on. They're on the Sabbath. They're walking through the grain fields. The disciples. It doesn't say Jesus is doing it, but it says the disciples are doing it. They're popping these heads of grain off, chewing them. We speculate kind of like eating sunflower seeds, right? They're just kind of doing busy work with their mouth, like they're kind of bored and walking along, but they're being followed, observed by some city folk, Pharisees, and they call them out on it.
That they're doing work on the Sabbath.
Yep. And then Jesus says, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. So that we're kind of caught up to speed. That's what we're talking about here.
Okay.
And we're just kind of kicking around like maybe this kind of, like we initially kind of thought this was maybe like a no-win situation. Like a scenario where he's been caught, right?
In the act,
allowing his disciples to do something that maybe was forbidden, but he used it as
setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Keith thinks maybe they were setting up the Pharisees to ask the question. Just so Jesus can let everybody know that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Sounds like the battle of my everyday Sunday.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah.
Well, I think just keeping the Sabbath, right? What does that mean? I feel like we're set up to sort of fail with that in the way life is now.
Yeah.
Right? But how do we maintain maybe what God meant by it? And I'm not sure that I even know. Does that mean we're supposed to rest, or does that mean we just celebrate him on the Sabbath, kind of like what we should probably be doing every day.
So on the Sabbath, you're taking a Sabbath, that break,
Right.
break from the work, right? It's like the root word for sabbatical, right?
Mhm.
A break
Right.
from the normal.
Okay.
So on Sunday, if you set apart, you're talking about your normal Sunday battle. So for you, you're setting apart Sunday as Sabbath time. Part
I
of that,
would say we try.
Don't we all?
don't we all?
The problem lies probably mostly, it sounds crazy, but like even sports and stuff with my children,
Mm-hmm.
where outside schedules have started to, well, that's a really bad thing to say, trump.
But yeah,
But demands of the outside world have started to interfere with what probably was held more as a Sabbath to us than what it has been, I would say, in the last recent years.
I fully agree. We have a friend. I totally am living that in that scenario with you. We have kids the same age. Mine plays baseball, which has tournament play bracket
Very
play
soon.
begins on Sundays.
Yeah.
So they can play Friday, they can play Saturday, but everybody plays on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And we have a friend here at church who's probably between me and my children in age, right? Like he's right in that middle. Grew up in Kentucky. And I remember last spring he said, you guys play on Sunday morning, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Right.
yeah. He's like, not in Kentucky, man.
Not in Kentucky.
And I was like, really? He said,
Really?
none of it starts till afternoon.
Really?
Oh, probably. Yeah. That would make sense. I think in
will
Georgia it's the
say-
same way.
I don't feel like any of ours. Okay, my son, who's now in college, played lacrosse.
Mm-hmm.
Lacrosse tournaments were a big Sunday, involved a lot of Sundays.
Yep.
Especially travel. My son played travel competitive basketball, AAU, and also competitive lacrosse. He was very big into sports.
And those both have Sunday bracket play.
Yeah, those were both a lot of Sunday bracket play. My daughter, so far, with volleyball, has had Sunday play also, but we've been fortunate that they have not started that until afternoon as well.
That's great.
But it's constant. And if it's not bracket play, coaches will put practices on Sundays, I think, just because schedules are so packed with stuff now. Kind of in desperation of even trying to get people together. It's really turned into...
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Is because even if you didn't want to take Sunday as a Sabbath, right? If you want to do Monday or Tuesday, well, you got stuff, you got to work. You've got, kids are in school, they're coming home, they got practices for this stuff, right? Like the reason that things are encroaching on Sunday is because it is almost your only free time, right?
100%.
Yeah.
So my question is, Angie, Keith is very he's very particular with some stuff. So I'm going to ask him a question here, and then we'll get your take on it. But so
I mean, I have listened to a previous podcast, and it does sound like Keith is pretty structured.
Oh, okay.
All right. Long-time listener, first-time caller, Angie, on the line.
Look at that.
Yeah, so Keith's really structured. Here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the context in which I am doing the things on Sabbath determine whether it is a Sabbath-approved activity or not?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because we're doing it in this context. We're talking about youth sports and stuff like this.
Yeah.
If I were to take a day of leisure, you say, Mitch, just... You're not traveling. You're not going on
and
a
you
trip.
took the kids
you're not
to a baseball field and hit some balls around. Then you're celebrating the Sabbath.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So
Because-
I think that goes back to how do we define sabbatical,
Yeah,
and what does that mean to each person?
I think it changes the context. It's a change of context to that which is your normal schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And you get enjoyment out of the things. Like,
Yes.
so think about a sabbatical for
And it's-
a professor in college, right? Most of the time they take a sabbatical. Well, they don't just sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
They go fellow at another university in a different country, or they'll go and do, research in their field. They'll take a trip to, like I had a history professor that went to a bunch of different places to like really, first time ever being in Jerusalem, right? To actually see the things that he's teaching about during his sabbatical. But that was energizing to him, right? And I think that that's the key for
100%.
Sabbath is if it's an energizing,
If you at the end of it you
relaxing-
feel renewed,
Yes.
not depleted,
Correct.
Is that a marker?
I think so, because I think when I read that verse where it says, it was for us.
Yep.
Mhm.
So doesn't that also change depending then on the person?
I
and
think
then
so.
Also our time in life.
Yep.
Mhm.
Was them picking, I guess I just say the time and how we've changed in history. So I would say, like, being with my family at a sporting event, especially because my kids, now maybe if your kids don't enjoy it,
Exactly.
or it becomes too competitive, or it's not healthy anymore, that would be another thing. But for my family, especially my husband loves sports, I love sports, that's a truly enjoyable day for us.
And you're doing it all together.
Typically all together. Yes. So, and I still think we are definite regular churchgoers and participate that way on Sundays. We try to make that a priority for sure. So that's part of our Sabbath too. So I think I agree with you guys. I think it depends on what value it brings to the individual.
So I would ask another question, and I think Mitch will know my answer to this, but so if that's the case, so it's something that's renewing to us, and we're defining the Sabbath that's okay. Is it also something that we're sacrificing? Is there a component of sacrifice to it as well? And I'll
Ooh.
give you a great
Okay.
example from this time, when Jesus' time, right? They may have needed to go tend to that field. They may needed to go have harvested that crop because it's time to harvest. They're behind on the harvest, but they're not doing that work on the Sabbath, right? Because it's holy.
Right.
So, like a great example for me would be it's starting to get close to gardening season, right?
Yep.
Gonna have to go till
Right.
that garden, gonna have to put some more dirt in there, gonna have to fertilize it, gonna have to get it ready for stuff. Even though we enjoy doing that as a family, am I substituting, like, well, this is work that needs to get done, and even though I enjoy it, it's really not, for me, a Sabbath moment would be more like hanging out on the back porch, watching the kids run around in the backyard, you listening to a little bit of music or whatever, right? A truly relaxing, where I'm not necessarily
Achieving.
achieving something in
Okay.
life, right?
Okay, but I think I completely understand that, but I also think that comes down to personal interest or what you define the Sabbath. Because I would tell you, my dad being a farmer my whole life, him sitting in a combine on Sunday is Sabbath. Like, he finds complete rest and peace in that more than he does in anything else in life. So I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had a guy in a small group conversation just a couple days ago was saying that he's got a big yard, takes him 4 hours to mow it, and he loves it.
My wife loves mowing the yard.
Saves it
just for that reason.
Saves it for Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you could sit and mow like our yard. You could sit on a rider for 2 hours and listen to a Bible podcast, with intentionality. So, going on a long walk, I mean, I find that to be celebrating the Sabbath. I guess it just depends on if you're trying to view that as it needs to be a whole group family activity, or can that be something that each fills your Sabbath individually? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's either way. It can be a solo activity. It can be a group activity. I know. Sometimes, like for me, my wife will want to go and do she likes this. I mean, I don't know what person doesn't like going to Target and just walking around, right?
I don't like going to
Um,
Target and walking around.
I don't.
I do.
I don't. So for her, that's relaxing, right? Like the other
Right.
Sunday, I think after church, after lunch, she was like, "Oh, I need a couple things from Target." I'm like, "Great, I'm gonna stay here. You take the kids, right?" And she's like, "Sounds
Yeah.
wonderful, right?" So I gotta sit, play on my computer a little bit in a nice quiet household. That was relaxing to me. And she walked around Target, saw people, chatted, was there like an hour, bought two things, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that was relaxing for her.
That brings me to my next point. Coming back to like what Angie is saying about like a previous our place and space in time and culture is very different than we had our guest Grammy on the horn who with her childhood they had one battery powered AM radio
Yeah.
and that was it. Like she had
Yeah.
no other influences in life
Right.
other than she looked up to the pianist at church that played the piano and the school teachers that boarded at their home.
Yeah.
Right? And like
Right.
when you compare that, and when you talk about Sabbath, there is nothing open. There's no businesses of operation. There's no, right? Like
Right.
Keith and I driving in to open up the church early morning to make some coffee on Sunday before guests arrive.
Yeah.
We can drive
Yeah,
by.
it's
We can
just
drive by
so
Casey's, Quick Trip,
Yeah.
get a burrito.
It was like forced Sabbath for your
Right.
Grammy, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a forced Sabbath because nothing
was
was
a cult-
open.
it was a cultural
Nothing was
Sabbath.
going on, right? And for
Right.
us, it's almost like we have to make time for it, or at least I would say at minimum recognize the things that give us energy and try to only do those things on this. You know what I mean? Like
I would agree with that. And I
Yeah.
still think that, and I do think that's a continuous battle.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree with that. I think the intentionality piece of defining that for yourself and then actually truly following through with that is for sure a battle.
And I've always appreciated all the pastors I've ever had, anytime they preach on Sabbath or speak on Sabbath, they fully recognize that they are working and doing their job on Sunday.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So that's not
yeah.
lost on them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I maybe have a stupid question.
Well, we're all lay people here. There are no stupid questions.
I'm lower than laymen.
No,
So-
you're not. There doesn't get lower than that.
So
Welcome
is
to the
is
bottom.
Was the calendar exactly the same? This is really stupid, I'm sure, but so is Sunday for sure the Sabbath even in our time?
No,
We
so
know that.
Sabbath, to use its Hebrew origination, coming back from God rested after creation on the seventh day. It's
Right.
Friday night at sundown until Saturday night at sundown.
Okay.
All right. As Christians, we claim the Sunday as Resurrection Sunday,
Right.
as Jesus was resurrected on Sunday. That's our signifying day
Right.
of the week that we use to worship. But as far as practicing Sabbath, I think I'm under the understanding that it's evolved in our view of it, I guess, as our Methodist view of it. Like I was getting at.
I mean, it's man-made, created to be Sunday.
Yes, very
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
That is it.
So let's be
And
honest,
I don't
can't
think
the
it has to be
Sabbath
Sunday.
almost be any day? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it doesn't
That's
have
what
to
I
be
was trying to
Sunday.
get to.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be
And the
Sunday.
question for me, does it have to be, not does it have to be, but what is the most successful use of time for your spiritual health and growth and development? Is it 24 hours, sundown to sundown?
Correct.
Is it a
Or
combination?
is it 1
Yeah.
hour every morning?
Yeah. It's kind of like how they added 5 minutes to the school day to make up for snow days, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I would agree. It's when are you taking that intentionality?
And are you being intentional about that time you took?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe that's even like your family dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting and no phones and I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe, who knows? I just think that can vary.
I think so too. I have a very loose interpretation of, well, like I'm coming back to this point that, it's not lost on pastors and preachers that they're working, they're doing their job.
Well, no, it's like Adam said. His Sabbath isn't Sunday. To him, it's more Saturday for him, right? Because that's the time that everybody's together as a family. But he could have easily looked at Friday in his example for him as his Sabbath if he's a little more like me in a way where I enjoy time. I also enjoy time solo.
Mm-hmm.
In my own thoughts, in my own kind of way. So like he says Friday, oh, that's not my, I'm doing doctor's appointments, I'm running here, I'm running there, I'm doing this, that. Well, if he was a different person, he could use that time as his Sabbath, and Saturday's his going around with the family and doing this and that. So he's choosing Saturday in that moment, right? So I don't think that anything's tied to specific.
So what's your
day.
what's your time?
Personality.
Yeah,
because I probably follow a much less structured. I mean, I would say I'm a much less structured personality in certain ways. Every day can look probably different from the next day for me. Some of that's just how my job is because I'm a consultant. Some of that's just my husband does so many extra things with like radio broadcasting, and we're on several committees and sports. And so I would say my Sabbath is probably not structured looking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I probably do need to be better about the intentionality of it. I would say every morning I would take at least a half hour of prayer, being in my thoughts. I don't always journal, but I go through a big grateful type of thing that I've got memorized almost in my head of how to think about stuff. So I don't know that would be considered Sabbath, but I do take intentionality each day. And then the rest would just be time with my family, like intentional time with my family without phones, distractions, whether that be dinner time or together doing something, which is also hard because I have a son in college. So finding that time all together is hard, but I'm probably not doing as good as I should, it sounds like.
It would be funny to go back in time. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh,
great.
When
they get Socrates and bring him back in the future.
Socrates, they called it.
Socrates. It'd be great to get some of those Pharisees and bring them into the future. Do you think they would just have like a aneurysm on the spot?
Oh, for sure.
They wouldn't last long.
For sure. For sure.
Oh,
I mean, it is unfortunate that our world has turned into, because I would say if I look at my upbringing in childhood, it was just way less busy and stressed. So much time outdoors, which I would say was felt Sabbath-like.
Yep.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, I do think being outdoors is very spiritual to me. Even if that's just play in the yard. But anyways, I would say it has gotten much more challenging.
But do you feel that that practice of doing less can actually gain you more in the spiritual context?
Oh, 100%. Like, I even think of, this is so stupid, but vacations to us is probably our biggest. I wouldn't want to say, I don't know if you could say a vacation's like a Sabbath retreat. But it very much so is to our family. So, for example, going to Colorado for a week and a lot less just being removed from distractions and spending time in nature and hiking and outdoors type activities when all four of us can be together. I would say those are more intentional, well-spent time for our family.
Yeah.
Is probably travel or vacation too. Almost like us. A Sabbath week.
There you go. And it involves sacrifice to do that, right? Like you have to think of all this stuff you have to do to prepare to even leave for a week, right? And then when you get back, all the things that you have to do because you were gone for a week, right?
For
So,
sure.
it takes in that sacrifice component, it takes a lot of sacrifice. It's easier to not go on vacation. It's easier to not take a day off. It's easier to not do it, and just stay within your
100%.
rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And that's
always
a,
I always
oh, go ahead.
remind myself of. I try to remind myself of that. Like, I love traveling, and if
Yeah.
I can remind myself, like, the farther I get away, it's funny. The farther I get away from a trip ending, the less interest I have in going on one. Does that make sense? Some people
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're more.
Yeah.
They're like, man, I haven't. They get itchy to go travel. Me,
Oh, I see.
the
Yeah.
more farther away from one I get, the more kind of complacent and worked into a
Sure.
rut and a routine.
You come back and you're like, oh man, I want to do that again.
You know.
And then 6 months later, you're like, I'm good.
Yeah, or you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, the planning and
The airline,
Yeah.
and hotel, and this. Yeah.
Like-
Scheduling. Oh, yeah. And it's so much harder once your whole family's not at home.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I agree. And pretty much what I'm taking from this is I need to do much better.
Well,
Thank
do
you.
not. That is
Thank
not.
you, guys. Thank you for this reminder of failing the Sabbath. And I need to go home now and build intentional time.
Well, we'll check back in with that later. We have loved having you on, and
Yeah, I appreciate it.
all right, thanks, Angie.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right,
we'll
Have
see
a good
ya.
day.
Bye.
Bye.
Man,
Making the people feel good about themselves.
See, we did our job today. It was a very pharisaical phone call we just had.
Oh, completely.
It was not. I thought we did.
I thought we did great.
I
what
thought
we
it was
need
a good
What we
conversation.
need to say more often is we're just as terrible at it as anyone else.
Well, that's where I was trying to come back around to. Like, you and I both work on Sunday.
yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
we enjoy, and that's the thing too. It's my most enjoyable, second to podcast day, my most enjoyable work day of the week. You know,
Yeah.
it's time to hustle, but I
yeah,
love
but you're
it.
seeing people, talking
Yeah.
to people, making people laugh, have a good time. I think my issue with it is that it's very similar to, I think, probably what every person struggles with, which is Monday through Friday, people are working, kids are in school. You don't really see much of each other in the morning. At night, it's
Hit or miss.
it's homework, dinner, take a shower, go to bed, more homework probably, very few minutes together. And then you have Saturday and Sunday, or, other families have different days or whatever, maybe just Saturday. And then you've got like, well, we got everybody together. Now we got to clean house. Now we got to, spring's coming. We got to do some yard work. We got to do this. We got to do that. And so you just end up planning everything, like for us where we work on Sunday, we plan everything for Saturday, and like birthday parties. I think our next 5 Saturdays are booked, right? Like between seeing this relative or birthday parties or, the multiple Easters we have to have for grandparents and, all that kind of stuff. Right. So it's, you're just booked, you're packed, And so for me, Sunday is actually the only time that I can do it. So it's like Sunday after work, till, we meet for small group. So I got like a 5-hour window to have a Sabbath. It's terrible. I'm a failure.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Everyone feels like they've let God down with their pursuit of Sabbath. But I want to remind all the kind listeners that Sabbath was made for man.
Yeah.
Man was not made for the Sabbath. That was the whole point we were trying to get to here, Keith.
It's not about following the dang rules of 24 hours of rest.
It's about what were the rules meant
to do
for you,
which is to rejuvenate you and get you ready again for the week. Rejuvenate you, worship the Lord, connect with God, feel better, so that you have 6 more days of not feeling as good.
All right.
All right.
Can we do that?
Yeah, we can
All
do
right.
that.
Well, let's take a stab at it. We'll circle back next week.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. Love
Bye.
you.